Mountain Time. I was just going through the Discord server, and I noticed there's a lot of metascript breakdown, which means people are looking at the patterns between entertainment as they overlap with news events. And I want to start with that because someone had shared something in the server yesterday about the hantavirus ship. The ship of people with the hantavirus was on a 33-day odyssey. That's the headline. 33-day luxury cruise to worst nightmare. How, quote, Atlantic Odyssey led to hantavirus outbreak. Atlantic Odyssey. So you have a tie-in with the upcoming Christopher Nolan film. And, just a quick reminder, everything that we're living through, participating in, or objectively observing with regard to big media events was scheduled to occur, was already on the program years ago. Just as a general axiom to keep in mind. So if you're reacting to something in the news because a headline triggers you, you have to realize that you're being played. There's absolutely no reason to overreact to contrived fake events. And what the truthers need to figure out is that the pre-planning staged events aren't real. It's theater. Hantavirus timeline on the MV Hondius shows 33 days passed before the world knew. A man died on a cruise ship in the South Atlantic on April 11th? Yeah. So this was about a month ago. The world only confirmed hantavirus on May 4th. So it took them 33 days to find out. And if you recall, the entire outbreak of COVID-19 was just saturated with 33s. And you can go back and look if you don't recall. And then, second, there's something about the mouse thing that I find interesting. We talked about Mighty Mouse, the CRS-19 mission of 2019. Came out, it was in December of 2019. SpaceX sent a bunch of genetically modified mice to the space station who were supposed to be resistant to muscular atrophy due to genetic engineering, which is why they were dubbed the Mighty Mice. Well, Mighty Mouse is a mouse, a cartoon mouse, who can survive in outer space. On that mission, there was a mouse on the outside of the rocket. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous and preposterous and impossible, but many things that we experience through the news that get grafted onto our reality are in fact impossible. Unfortunately, too many people find them believable. So fake events get grafted into our reality. We call these hyperstitions. But obviously, you can't send a real mouse on the outside of a rocket, but it was there. Objectively speaking, it's called Mousegate. And I'm bringing this up because Mousegate preceded the pandemic outbreak, and rats are generally associated with plagues. And now we have this hantavirus thing with the deer mouse as a carrier. So I'm like, okay, what's next? Aliens get phased out, and now they're bringing in the rats. Now, in addition to Mighty Mouse, there's another mouse association that you could attach to SpaceX, which is a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has it that the mice that scientists are doing experiments on are actually doing experiments on us. So I don't know. There's got to be something with the mice. What's up with the spider? We've been talking about the spider-human coupling in that movie and spider aliens and stuff, but the Spider-Man movie's coming out next month. No, actually in July. And leading up to that, we have Kyle Rittenhouse in the news because he was bitten by a spider. And given that he's a world stage character who's previously portrayed, been featured in major events, it just seems to be the same kind of foreshadowing. So associating this rat-infested ship with the Odyssey seems to be some kind of foreshadowing. And a lot of people are noticing we have a point. Even the director of The Boys said, "What the F?" when he noticed that the Homelander with his Bible and his golden statue exactly parallels Trump with his Bible and golden statue. And you have all these evangelicals kowtowing before that golden statue, like they're worshiping it, running around it. And, this is, again, evangelicals worshiping this golden calf. And then Trump appears via speaker. So it's like the statue is speaking. And he's like, you guys did a great job. It's a great statue. I mean, it's just what we're in right now is so wild. So what's next is what I'm asking, because obviously the UFO thing's a flop. There's a parachute flare being mistaken for some kind of an angel. So a lot of the Christians are actually worshiping that, which is not surprising. Religious people never really need a lot of strong evidence. They just need relics. You could, toast the face of the Virgin Mary onto a piece of bread or a tortilla, and people will line up for miles. Like, religions have always used psyops and relics, and all relics are fake. I mean, how many reliquaries claim to have a nail from the cross or a piece of wood from the cross? All fake. And there's still an entire group of people who believe that the Shroud of Turin is real, that it represents some kind of photographic or some kind of impression by a transcending being onto the cloth. So we don't live in a world of rational people, and it's not even encouraged, it's discouraged. In fact, rational thinking is sabotaged. The gaslighting is systemic, and the appeal to authority is assumed when it comes to the mainstream. So yeah, in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, mice are actually hyper-intelligent pan-dimensional beings, using mice as projections. And Earth is a giant experiment to find out the answer to the ultimate question. So that's the explanation for the mice in that context. So they are mice, but they're being, like Agent Smith, they're being possessed by something external, some kind of higher intelligence. But let me get back to the Discord server, because a few things stuck out to me. Again, 33-day Atlantic nightmare. And then Spider-Man comes out on July 31st. The Odyssey thing obviously has a lot of significance, as we've been talking about with the Poseidon, which I think alludes to Putin's weapon, the nuke that hits a coastal city. And that's coming out just as the Terminator hits the big screens. Terminator, James Cameron, and James Cameron, of course. See, this is my thinking on it. Because I talked about how James Cameron has predictive programming for 9/11 in T2. How Schwarzenegger's overlooking Ground Zero on the collateral damage billboards. How Cameron foreshadowed the Twin Towers and the jumpers in Titanic. And on 9/11, he was at the site of the Titanic. But he was specifically in something called the Deep Sea Challenger. So being at the Deep Sea Challenger at the site of the wreckage called to mind for many of us Revelation 9/11 about the destroyer in the abyss. So destroyer, Challenger, Exterminator, Abaddon, Apollyon. There's various names for it, but the Challenger would also fit. So you have the Challenger overlooking the devastation. And to me, that may be foreshadowing the Poseidon unmanned submarine with the nuke, perhaps sending a radioactive tidal wave to Seattle and doing a T2-like detonation Judgment Day sometime in the next probably 6 to 8 weeks. That's what it looks like, because they beam something into the consensus mind, like that image, the very dramatic image of the nuke hitting a coastal city and people being incinerated, and they do it for a reason. It's predictive programming. And if you need any more evidence that predictive programming is real, remember, it was the Disclosure Day trailer that triggered the UFO mania for the last month, where for the last month and a half or so, most of the population are prepared to accept the existence of aliens, and the rest are admitting demons into their worldview. So the limiting factor on what people will believe is what's on the movie screen, which is why I refer to it as the new Overton window. For the programmed, that wouldn't include us. Here at the IPS think tank, we reject the screen's appeal to authority. It's not a sensory apparatus. I don't let it override my perceptions. Big Brother doesn't gaslight me. Cubstar pointed out, Animal Farm's coming out, and it's getting a lot of flack for being anti-capitalist instead of anti-communist. A cautionary tale. I bet there's a Trump character in it. And a lot of people are, because the director commented on it, and some big Twitter account with millions of followers mentioned the Homelander overlap with Trump. And people's minds are blown. They can't figure it out. They're all confused because normies can't compute this stuff. So they resort to stuff like it's a simulation. But what the more observant commenters are noticing is that, well, this episode was filmed years ago. So how do you explain the perfect timing? Well, we've been pointing this out for some time. Concurrent programming represents a major glitch in the matrix. Far more than predictive programming that the denialists can just hand wave away incredulously. The concurrent programming phenomenon needs to be looked at more skeptically, but most people won't because they'll think, oh, that's just an anomaly. But we know better. We know that this is standard operating procedure and it happens all the time. All right, continuing. Yeah, apparently Brendan Fraser, the actor, is getting in shape for a new Mummy movie. And people are saying the video of him lifting weights is AI generated. And there's a new program I haven't used yet. What is it called? It has something bananas. But people are suggesting it's fake. I think it is because the dumbbells have 22s on them, and there's no 22-pound dumbbells in my timeline. I like the weight bench next to the leather recliner. Like, I'm starting to lean towards fake. All right, now let's continue here. Someone pointed out something weird. I don't know if I even want to get into it until I can look at it. But it's basically this. Brendan Fraser was in a movie called Furry Vengeance in 2010. And this is before furries started assassinating people, before lone furries became the new lone wolves. But Furry Vengeance 2010, there's a scene here where a wrecking ball hits his car. And people are pointing out in the comments that right before the wrecking ball hits the car, it's a big boulder rolling down a hill, he screams out, Miley Cyrus, which is kind of funny because the song Wrecking Ball. The thing is, the song came out 3 years after the movie. So I don't know what that means. I got to dig into it. Sort of like we were talking about how the Death Star looks like one of Saturn's moons, but we didn't know that until 3 years after the movie. I mean, I understand why, because, we live in a Disney universe, Planet Netflix, and we have a number of overlapping fictional universes, but the main one is MSM, is what I call it, mainstream mediation. So the mainstream mediated worldview that everyone internalizes and treats as objective is in fact, in my opinion, well, observably, it is a fictional universe. It's like a really good way to explain it. All right, moving on. There was something else I wanted to get to. Here it is. Venomous says, we're noticing zoonotic linkages lately. They keep mentioning Kate Perry's Dark Horse when talking about her upcoming FIFA performance. Okay, so the astronaut, Kate Perry, and Kate Perry's in the news right now for some really strange behavior, which I'm just inclined not to believe it because it's so outrageous. But if true, it would explain her silence on Russell Brand's antics. Russell Brand is the performative Christian who's been attempting to whitewash his whole image before something big surfaces, is what it looks like. I mean, he looks guilty to me. When I see him baptizing people in that river, I'm like, what is this guy covering up? Like, I would not want to be downstream. I hope somebody called the EPA. Now, the Trojan horse thing. So a dark horse, Trojan horse, fair analogy. And if you look at the movie poster for the Odyssey, it's got the big burning horse. Kind of looks like Lucifer. Lucifer from the Denver airport, which is that blue-eyed horse. Looks like a demonic horse. The sculptor, in fact, was here where I live, and I remember seeing a lot of his work at the UNM campus. And he died when, I think, Lucifer fell on him. So, I mean, I don't know if he called it Lucifer, but He was the first sacrificial victim. Okay, moving on. Someone mentioned Golden Dawn. Plain Decoded says, does anybody remember when Jordan Maxwell was talking about these leaders talking about a new dawn? It reminds me of Donald Trump. I was thinking about the power of ritual, and most important books are the Golden Dawn. What do we see here? Yes, so the Golden Dawn has different connotations because one, it's an offshoot of the OTO. The Golden Dawn is one of these Thelemic societies, and it refers to the New Age, a new rising sun. But there's also a white nationalist group called Golden Dawn, and I was just watching The Boys season 5, and in episode 1 he gives a speech and he praises to a new golden dawn. And I think it's definitely a reference to Donald Trump. Remember, Donald Trump is a construct, many decades in the making. I mean, long before he was president, his role was already constructed, and he was being foreshadowed, prophesied, if you will, through many mass media appearances, in the realm of entertainment. I'm not talking about The Apprentice. I'm talking about Back to the Future, Trackdown, Super Mario Brothers, A Man in Full more recently. The Homelander is a very recent one. But there are many examples of Donald Trumps in movies foreshadowing what he's doing right now. So the Golden Dawn reference does seem conspicuous to me. And we are moving into their new age. That is the underlying theme here. So we talk about metascript and our history being written in advance. And yeah, that's on a political level, sure. But there is the astrotheological component that we can't ignore. And that was very clear when the world ended on 12/21/2020. So we are living through a metascript that has multiple levels: the celestial, the terrestrial, and you could say the chthonic, the subconscious, the subterranean. So you got these three tiers, like the esoteric, the mundane, and then this overarching transition into this new paradigm, the progressive view, where they're replacing a lot of archaic features with science fictionized versions. And that's why you have the atheists out there worshiping angels, which have been rebranded as aliens. So a lot of it's just rebranding. I mean, I think we all know here that climate change is just rebranded flood mythology. Flood myths are very powerful for motivating people because you get to scare them. The idea that their God's going to drown them is a powerful motivator. And the idea that ocean levels rising, how many people shelled out money for that? Carbon taxes. I mean, they got people scared that Gaia is going to hit back. There's some retribution heading our way. Let me catch up on your comments. HBIC, Barry, Plain Dakota says, I'm going to watch you on Kick. Yeah, Kick is Infinite Plane Radio. You can find all the links at ips.monster. And as I said, I was going to turn on the 24/7 audio stream, and it's on. Find the link at ips.monster, and I'm playing the latest, but I'm going to also use that for a lot of cross-marketing with other podcasters. And I've rebranded it. I'm in the process for the 24/7, where I'm just going to deposit a lot of MP3s that aren't just from the Infinite Plane Radio, but maybe other channels that I communicate with. Because we have to have an off-world stage network of content creators, and this is the first step there. Till56 says, the hantavirus is mentioned on page 33 of the COVID vaccine insert as a side effect. This is playing out like Utopia. Well, hopefully it doesn't play out entirely like Utopia, where the people who are reading the predictive programming get murdered by Arby, who weirdly looks sort of like a Mark Sargent. But he's like this government assassin who takes out the conspiracy theorists who figured it out. What's up, Deprogram Truther, Thirst13. Plain Dakota says, Epcot Center, people are talking about how it's an acronym for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. It's probably true. Jamarian says, please consider writing your memoirs in a book and publishing. Your experiences are interesting and insightful. Well, I do write a lot. In fact, I have a ridiculous number of composition notebooks, and every night I'm doing voice to text, and then I throw them away because I don't have room for them. And I do have a collection of writings I'm publishing soon that relate to synchronicity. In fact, I picked up a book. Last week we were talking about Peter J. Carroll from the Illuminati of Phanteros, how he recently died. He died right before, let's see, it was the 23rd. So about a week before the anniversary, the founding of the Bavarian Order of the Illuminati. And I had not kept up with his work. I read Liber Null, Liber Chaos. I didn't really keep up with him. And weirdly enough, this guy managed to, being one of the, actually probably the main architect of chaos magic, the whole concept behind it, which is essentially a view of the subject stripped of any religious trappings, any sort of dogmas, just trying to get to the fundamentals, where it becomes something more like parapsychology. But anyway, when I learned he died, I looked him up and I found that I missed two of his latest books. So I picked up one here. It's called The Apophenian. And we've been talking about how when you notice patterns, they call it apophenia. When you see shapes that aren't there, or it's pareidolia. But you could also call creating art a form of madness in this sense. So without psychopathologizing it, apophenia, pattern recognition, is built into us. And some will say, oh, that's just your pattern recognizing monkey brain. It has no higher function. But what I've attached it to is this process that's innate to allow us to facilitate communication, intra-self communication. Like what we interpret as an external intelligence, the universe interacting with us, is really just intra-self communication. And that's the premise of my upcoming book on synchronicity. And it seems that Peter Carroll has arrived at much of the same. And for the last couple of years, I've been talking about panpsychism, where it's not necessary to think of the soul and the body as a duality, a split, or one is trapped by the other, but it's a continuity, that we're just living at the lowest expression of what you could consider to be the spirit. And I'm asking, is mind different than spirit? Well, in the first couple of chapters, he's covered this exact terrain. And chapter 2, panpsychism, and he breaks down a number of ideas here that suggest that maybe it's kind of antiquated and not helpful to think of mind and spirit, or mind and spirit as separate, and then also as is body separate from mind. Because yesterday I was reading that article about the hard problem of consciousness and how it's not a hard problem, that science can explain human existence without reference to a soul. We don't need that as a way to explain how we think. You can reduce it all down to a biological process. And that being said, if you look at panpsychism as a paradigm, which is considered to be mystical, not scientific, but if you do, then it kind of blurs that distinction, makes it somewhat irrelevant, and it makes it possible to explain some of these other effects, which, the term magic is really almost useless in this context, and it's addressed here. We were also talking about Robert Anton Wilson, and he actually wrote something on the back here. If you don't know, Peter Carroll he's one of the founders of the IoT, the Illuminati of Phanteros, but his work built upon that of Austin Osman Spare, who created the whole idea of sigil magic. And we got into this discussion with sigil magic a while ago because it seems like if they're targeting us with propaganda at various levels, subconscious as well as the conscious stuff designed to provoke, then how is that any different than the theory and practice of sigil magic, where inserting subliminal programming is supposed to have some kind of an effect? And not just any effect, as in self-fulfilling prophecy, but hypothetically, if man does have any co-creative capacity, could that be hijacked by the media events that we're internalizing? What is the difference between a mass media event, for example, and a ceremony, a ritual? Are these things overlapping? So I'm finding a lot of answers in the chaos magic paradigm. I'll do a review on that after. But I'm not sure about writing memoirs. I mean, who reads those? Maybe on a select thing, like on synchronicities, sure. But It's not really about me. It's not really about me personally. It's about the ideas. Go to ips.monster and click on the link to get to Kick. And if you look in the comments, it shows that we're on Kick, YouTube, Twitch, and X. Happy Sunday. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I saw a lot of sun worshippers out. Remember, Project Hail Mary, the sun was dying, but miraculously it rose from the dead. Just in time for Easter. And the Son of God, obviously. I don't mean they literally worship the sun. And I consider that. Would I worship the sun? I respect it. I respect its power. But do I worship it? I don't know. I was like, and I don't really worship I wouldn't worship the moon. It's too inconsistent. You know, the cycles. It's like bipolar. I would go with maybe Venus. I would worship possibly Venus, just because if you think about what we do with our time, you know, why do you listen to music? Why do you pay attention to movies and art and any of this stuff? It's aesthetics. It's beauty. You don't want your life to be ugly and pointless. You want beauty and meaning. And I think Venus kind of encapsulates that almost more than any other. But that could be misinterpreted. I think the Greeks called her Lucifer, and it means light bearer, which is that Lucifer is a fictional character, by the way. You know, it's kind of interesting how people are all satanophobic, but it's like Satan's not really even that big of a deal. If you look at the entirety of the Bible, he almost seems like a minor character, except within the book of Job, where he's clearly working for God. But most of the concepts people have for these two characters, whether they're the same or they're different, stems from literature. And that's just another example of how the entertainment, the literature, the movies informs our worldviews. And I don't think it's accidental whatsoever that the mainstream movies appropriate so much religious themes, iconography, and archetypes. And why is that? They're not trying to convert you to Christianity with a movie about Ryan Gosling going to space and mating with a spider alien. They're appropriating the symbols because they're replacing it. They're supplanting it. The new religion where space is heaven. You know, Project Hail Mary, Mary, Queen of Heaven, space is the new heaven. I'll have to do a deep dive on the parallels with the Artemis mission, man going the furthest he's ever gone from the Earth, and Project Hail Mary, a man goes furthest from, well, to another galaxy, in fact. Yeah, Ryler, Christians get their information from Paradise Lost more than the Bible. Well, I think Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno, well, Dante's Inferno is where we get hell, our idea of hell and the torments, which, honestly, it's just. I kind of like it. You know, the punishment should fit the crime. There should be one layer of hell that's just nothing but wood chippers. And you fall through the wood chipper, you reconstitute, and you fall into another wood chipper. People like Authentic Intent would go there. All right. Now, I would like the Nolans to take that on. The Odyssey is probably going to be, I think it's going to be good. I mean, I'm just going to watch it because I know there's going to be some kind of predictive programming subtext. But I am kind of looking forward to watching it on IMAX. I want to get the movie theater experience as well, because then you see the trailers. And the trailers contain condensed versions of the movies and their major predictive programming elements almost every single time. When I watched Project Hail Mary, the opening thing was Spider-Man. And I still haven't cracked that one, but there's something up with Spider-Man. There's something up with the spider aliens. And Kyle Rittenhouse getting bitten. My only thinking on that it could possibly pertain to is the notion that he's like this teenage hero, which is what Peter Parker's theme was, which makes me wonder, maybe it portends something for the summer. Like maybe Kenosha will have another peaceful protest. Yeah, I'm already AI, if you didn't know. I'm artificially intelligent. I'm inauthentic. This content is repetitive and bereft of any commentary value, as per RJ at YouTube. And he says he knows that I might find this to be frustrating. But I have 90 days to fix it, to become real, and to generate quality content. And they might consider remonetizing this channel. But we don't care. We don't really need their help here. We are multicasting, and we're only here because this is a commons. And it just really displays how disingenuous they are as a company. They did this to a lot of people. It wasn't just us, but I do feel like we were specially targeted. Now, as a result of that, because, weirdly enough, I had just turned off paid subscriptions at the infiniteplanesociety.com website because I was going to focus on the YouTube members. Well, they deleted all the YouTubes. So we had 200 YouTube members with blue shields disbanded. They shut down our lodge. So today I turned paid subscriptions back on. So if you don't want to be paying for archives and for live stream notifications, you just go to your Substack and turn it off. You can, now there's a couple of options here. If you want live stream notifications, you have a couple options. And I'll make those clear in the next newsletter. You've got Patreon and Substack. If you want the content free, as in the archives, just go to Spotify. Spotify is free. And I'm doing Spotify free because I want to get more subscribers there. I've almost got 500,000 downloads so far. And that's with less than 700 subscribers. And if you don't recall, 2 years ago, I scaled it up to 4,000 subscribers. And I just turned on monetization. And then my account was taken down by my channel enemy. And I had to threaten to sue Spotify to get my channel back. But by then, I had lost my subscribers. He claimed copyrights. And I was trying to sue them. And I found out that their legal offices are at the One World Trade Tower. So I need somebody who can go to the One World Trade Tower for me and drop off a letter of intent to sue. I don't think I'm going to let Spotify get away with it. They literally handed the copyrights for my podcast over to this person, and it took me a few days to get it back. But the damage was done. We must be blocked on Kick because I'm plugged into Kick. Maybe they don't want me there because I'm not a race baiter or a looks maxer. That's all it is. I mean, really, Kick is a lot of sketchy provocateurs and attention-seeking questionable people. I mean, I haven't really ventured around very much, but I've looked at Kick streamers, and I'm not necessarily proud to be among them, but we have to go where the people are. Ollie Goering says, I think concurrent programming is an unwanted feature in the Metascript. They have to operate in concurrent themes, or they'll have to operate in chaotic memes like the current brain rot. Well, I think that it's more noticeable now because there's more content than ever. There's a crap flood of entertainment at all times. But this deluge just makes it more obvious because we can actually talk about it online. However, it has been a consistent feature of this thing from day one. Concurrent programming and predictive programming are kind of the same thing. The difference is the predictive stuff builds up to the event, and the predictive stuff that happens at the same time we call concurrent. But oftentimes, as with like collateral damage, for example, or Megalopolis, it will, as in the movie will come out after the event, like a little too late. And then they'll have to apologize. They'll have to modify it. But ever since Netflix, and I started pointing this out, I said, if you want to know what's on the news tomorrow and you don't want to watch the news, go to Netflix. Well, with Netflix, it's more like one-to-one stuff to the point where it's predictable. See, our model's predictable. That's what makes this irrefutable, is that we have built-in features that we discussed, that there are built-in features we identified that make this thing very much predictable. So when Fakeologist and I were talking about the Louvre being robbed of the crown jewels, well, that was concurrent with the No Kings protest. And I said, well, if it's fake, because we didn't know. I'm like it seems fake because it's being blasted everywhere, and it's a pointless story. So it's the type of thing you would expect. But if it's fake, it's going to have some predictive programming element. And then Inside Edition reports, oh, there's this ironic coincidence that as thieves rob the crown jewels, a TV show called Lupin has a character go into the Louvre and steal Marie Antoinette's necklace. They called it an eerie coincidence because it happened at the same time. At the same time, the Drudge Report had an image of Donald Trump as Marie Antoinette. What's the significance? Crown jewels, no kings, and Marie Antoinette lost her head during a no kings protest. And then Trump's being protested against as a king. So I think it's unwanted. It's an unwanted feature in the sense that they don't want us noticing it because all the big channels, all the big shill channels, all the controlled opposition channels, and all the stooges, they all know very well about Snake Eyes, but none of them figured out what it means. They have their old worn out explanations about they have to tell us what they're going to do. Why? Because of karma. Then I had to ask, what's the karma in telling us you're going to do a golden statue of Trump? Because every fake event is foreshadowed, not just the bloody ones. But everybody noticed Snake Eyes, but nobody noticed Tempest. And why does this matter? Well, because not only was the Tempest at the same time, and not only did it contain more overlaps than Snake Eyes, but it predicted Erica Kirk's character arc for the next 6 months. Well, ongoing, actually. I need to finish the season. The last episode I watched had a submarine with a nuke on it. And then another element, too, the release dates of the concurrent programming, which is just predictive programming happening at the same time. The release dates are a dead giveaway that this is intentional. It's a feature that they want. And that's because they're putting you into a bubble. So you're in a media ecosystem. They create an echo chamber. I picked up on this when, for a period of months, I watched CNN every day. And I was just observing these patterns. And it was pretty obvious with the CNN programming. But I remember watching this show about Donald Trump kicking off his campaign in Waco and how it was a dog whistle to the white nationalists who all got their start in Waco with the whole Branch Davidian versus ATF coming to take the guns. And I was looking at their characterization of Trump going there as a provocation, and I agreed. It's like, who doesn't associate Waco with the incineration of a 33-year-old cult leader who thought he was Jesus? Alex Jones got his start there, as did McVeigh, who retaliated on an anniversary date with Oklahoma City. And then, of course, that was the year that, we already got into this stuff, but I don't want to go too deep into Waco at this moment, but the day Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco, guess what was on Netflix? Newly released the night before, Waco. Waco, American Apocalypse. So I'm like, wait, Waco, American Apocalypse? Donald Trump kicking off in Waco. What's going on here? Thank you, Thirst for Truth. Appreciate the accelerant, which is what we need. We are getting into the point of auto-hoax accelerationism. We're past the point of no return. We crossed the Rubicon. We can't back away, back into quarantine, and just observe as though we don't have a point, as though we're not correct. Like, we just need to go fumigate Trutherville. We can say a couple things about them. If you're still in Trutherville, if you're still behind orthodoxies, which I call guardrails, you are controlled opposition to us, to what we represent here, which is an objective understanding of reality, separating real from fake, deprogrammed, decoupled from the metascript. So insofar as you are carrying water for alt media, you are controlled opposition. And second, you're in a cult. If you, as a red pill truther, maybe you've had some of the Kool-Aid at Alex Jonestown, maybe you've snorted a few red pills, you hit the Q-pipe, you're in your little alt reality, and you look at the mainstreamers and you're like, Oh yeah, they're in a cult. They're NPCs. They're brainwashed. Well, guess what? You're all brainwashed. You're in a cult. We can prove it. So this is your opportunity to have a calm, measured paradigm shift and get off the world stage. Leave the world stage behind. It's not like we're going away or this is going to change. Like this is our foundation. This is the format. This is our model that is, I'm saying, irrefutable. What we have really put forth here are explanations for the existence of government planted subplots for fake events. And subplots are simply what conspiracy theories are. You know, a subplot is the other version of the story that doesn't really take away from the story or even call it a story. Like everything Candace Owens has said is a subplot to the story that the leader of TPUSA got assassinated. That's just a story. It's fake. And every one of her conspiracy theories treats the story as real and just offers a more intriguing subplot. All predictable. And how did we predict this? How did we predict it would be nothing but guardrails and subplots in order to prevent people from calling it fake? Well, because it's formulaic. They've been doing this for many decades. Jermaine says, is it possible the archons who see future timelines convey this to high-level groups? These high-level groups give this... No. Okay, there's two explanations. So what we're talking about, when we say predictive programming, you need to demystify it. It has nothing to do with higher powers or lower powers. These are commercials. The Homelander and his golden statue and his Bible, characterizing him as this, basically a toddler in a tyrant's body. This character is meant to be Trump, obviously, but this is a form of advertising. It's a form of propaganda. It's an influence operation. So there's no reason to assert things like demons, angels, or dark occult forces and revelations of the methods and simulations. Just that stuff's for Trutherville. Let them sort through that mess. We do not need to resort to mystical explanations for the nightly news. It's a bad habit. And it's been done for way too long. Like Professor Yang, the guy at the whiteboard. Like, okay, he's got to be a clear thinker. He's got a whiteboard. And he's like, oh, Charlie Kirk was killed in a ritual. What do you mean a ritual? Like, what Hollywood movie, are we drawing this from? Because as much as I study in the subject of magic, the theory and practice of magic and various paradigms in it, I still can't find anything where it talks about these so-called rituals that involve replacing celebrities with bad-looking clones or off-looking clones, or the idea that televised psyops are somehow, this is like that it's some kind of a satanic rite. And again, Satan's mostly a fiction. So again, I'm just saying, I don't know about high-level groups. I don't know about your... What I'm saying is that, no, the process here can be explained without recourse to the mystical. If you want to write history in advance, you're selling stories. These stories are the product. The events are being pre-sold. We're being sold to characters, sold as in, we buy it, as in, this person's real, this person's valid, this person exists. The reason why someone like Candace Owens will never respond to a channel like this is because she would have to break character or deny the fact that she is playing a character. And people forget that. She's a character. Curterfest says, I probably drive Spotify nuts. Every night I put your show on and let it run all night. I've been doing this for 2 years, have not listened to anything else. Hey, thank you very much. Now, I don't know if you put a message in there, if I screwed up on the code, because it's the TTS is supposed to read a message. So let me know. Ryler says, you can take a road trip to Seattle for 6/11. I will go to Seattle for 6/11. What would it take? I wouldn't do a road trip. My vehicle wouldn't make it. I would take a train. That would give me an opportunity to finish one of these manuscripts. The main obstacle to writing is getting into a place where I can sit and work uninterrupted. And I could probably make that work on a train. Although the last time I was on a train, I had a horrible experience. You're just in this compact cell with rows and rows of people who all kick their feet up without their shoes on. And it's just like, okay. And then it goes and it stops, it goes and it stops. With a plane, it's just uninterrupted. It's uninterrupted. It's smooth like an elevator. I can sleep in a plane. But the train, I don't know. Now that I think about it, I think I'll drive. If I can crowdfund the gas, I would do it. If I can sell enough subs, I will go to 611. So if you don't know anyone who is unaware of this, 611 is the prophesied date that Seattle's going to get Oppenheimered. It's going to get Judgment Day. Plain Dakota says, Charlie Kirk was killed in a Golden Dawn ritual, if you recall. A spectacle was an eclipse. Well, I'd say source. Because, it's multi-C0. Awesome. Thank you for that. Sacrifice means to make sacred. And even if you look at practices where animal sacrifice is still a thing, it's not wanton violence. It's not torture. It's basically, it's something that exists pre-refrigeration. People, it's just butchery with a little bit of theater. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Although, the Golden Dawn rituals also explain sacrifice or the idea of sacraments in a different context as well. So it's like there is this idea of energetic exchange, but it's coming from the practitioner themselves. It's their devotion. I really can't find any source. It's like this trutherism where they all believe in, quote, sacrifices and interdimensionals and demons. And you ask them for definitions. Define interdimensional. Define demon. Define sacrifice. You can't. You can't get a definition. Define dark forces, or what was it? Revelation of the method. They say, or the laws of the universe. That's one of my favorite ones. Oh, the elite have to tell us. This is what Professor Yang says, because they go by the laws of the universe. Like, can you show me these laws of the universe? Like, where are they printed? Ryler says it's $500 for a 10-segment, 120-day pass on Amtrak. So the idea then would be, I go to Seattle, and I sit in the Space Needle on 611, and I wait for the Kraken. Tim Osmond, RIP 611, says plain decoded. I'll take the risk. I'll take the risk. I'll participate. Because if there's an evacuation, if there is an event, I would want to be there with my kick stream on. Hopefully I can get it fixed by then. Look, there's an effort right now to take down Kick, in my opinion, to censor it. They're turning the public against it. Sort of like the public sees X as a nuisance, a threat to public health. It's probably going to cause terrorism. Kick is allowing people to monetize antisocial behaviors and degeneracy in whole new ways. And they're putting out these very, just really, I guess, repulsive characters. They did this with Google Videos. Do you remember when Google Videos was censored or deleted? They were saying, internal memos at Google were saying, our main excuse for talking about censoring Google, the poster child for this whole agenda, was Logan Paul, because he was electrocuting rats and looking at suicide victims and laughing. It was just this whole area of content creation that was uncensored, unregulated, and it was a direct pipeline to 20 million children. So they used that as an excuse to filter YouTube. And I think they're trying to set up a pretext to go after Kick, because the main channels there are looksmaxers who are, it's not just body dysmorphia. It's just all sorts of unhealthy behaviors associated with it. People taking drugs very young, self-mutilation. And then you have, of course, the odd behaviors of the main looksmaxer clavicles, like shooting dead alligators, firing guns at drones. And there's worse stuff, I'm sure. And then you have these people running around yelling racial slurs, pretending to be fighting for the First Amendment, when that has nothing to do with the First Amendment. So they're deliberately sabotaging the entire thing. Laser say, law of the universe number 1, people love to believe BS. Yeah, another thing here, a difference between us and them. So the conspiracy theorists, truthers, red pillars, J pillars included, if you're a J pillar, you're on notice. You fall in the category of believers. You have a passive mode of accepting various claims. Like you hear it from a source you trust, you take it in. For most people, it's the government, the mainstream media, the government approved news. Oh, I just believe all that, disbelieve all the rest. Well, truthers similarly have a passive relationship to their sources and they believe, which means they're not reality testing it. They're not arriving at knowledge. And what we're pointing out here is that we disbelieve many of the things they believe because we have more information. So we are the informed disbelievers. We are fomenting a culture of disbelief in a world of people who are just inundated with interchangeable, which should be mutually exclusive, but this assortment of belief systems. You've got the fictional universe of the mainstream, which is fictive level 1. And then you have any number of fictional universes you can just attach yourself to, worldviews, paradigms. And the woke right, J pill, red pill, are the mirror of the woke left, Antifa activists. So they both live in these fictional universes that are really intense. They're far more active than the normies, which is why they call themselves woke. You know, if you're red pill, red pillars will call themselves awake. Like, oh, Alex Jones woke me up. No, he didn't. He just gave you some harder propaganda. He took your dream and turned it into a nightmare. And this is true. I mean, just listen to any truther. Like, what are the 10 things you believe that separate you from the normie? And they're like, oh yeah, the sky's poisoned. They're blotting out the sun. Nanobots in the pokies. 5Gs are reading our minds. Immigrants are going to kill us all. Aliens are demons. And you just like, wow, you live in a very dark world. It's very black pill, in fact. They eventually become black pill when they realize that they can't change any of it. All right, continuing here. We talked about, okay, so again, Substack is back on monetization, but I'm doing that because we are archiving videos there and it's generating clips. So the video clippers actually need me to have that available. But you do not have to be a paid member there. You can use it for live stream notifications and you can just get the archives on any of the podcast platforms. It may not always be video, Spotify does. And I'm doing it because I do want to increase the number of people listening on the podcast, in the podcast sphere. All right, let's get into the Twitter feeds. By the way, phones are open, 888-86-HOAX, 1-888-886-HOAX. Okay, look at this. Rebecca Jones is tweeting the director of The Boys. His name is Kripke. Could you tip us off as to what Homelander might do in the final episode so we can prepare for whatever crazy Trump has in the works, since he's already caught up with the show? This is what the director posted. So the director of The Boys actually posted this meme. Seriously, what the F? And it has the Trump next to the Homelander thing. And it's Trump with a raised fist, which is after he had the blood on his face, which was foreshadowed in the last season of The Boys, and they changed the last episode because of it. And you look at the thumbnail, and it's a Homelander beaming with blood on his face. And you have the overlapping Bibles. The Trump and the Homelander Bible also overlap here. There's quite a lot we could get into with the Homelander character, but the director commenting on this. So how did he get this information? Because he's a metascripter. Now, what does this mean? It means that he's A, in the know about the script and how his work is being used to advance psyops, fake events in the future, because this was done years ago. So either he's very well aware that his movie is psyop reinforcement, or two, he was given these scenes or ideas. He was given some input from the Central World News Services, which is the group in newsbenders that have agents in every newsroom, in every production company, and they're the ones who basically distribute the memes that they need forced out there. I happen to think that he's very much in the know, and he's helping to elucidate the association between the two to hype up the show. So he's giving away a bit of the script here, or his foreknowledge, but he's able to say by saying, oh, what the heck? He's able to pretend like he didn't know that 4 years ago, or whenever they recorded this, that this was going to happen. I'm convinced that Rep. Luna, who changed her name to Luna in 2019, already knew that she'd be part of the 2026 faux disclosure. And that's why they changed her name to Luna, is to correspond with the moon mission and associate her with loony and lunatic, because Marjorie Taylor Greene was already being phased out and they need a new token crank for the right. Here it is, the 33-day Atlantic Odyssey that turned into a hantavirus nightmare. And the Nolans, both of them, Christopher and Jonathan, are metascriptors, and they consistently code their numbers with the 33s. I mean, look at Fallout, Vault 33, Oppenheimer, the 33 pounds of marbles. There's quite a lot. Cope says, I haven't watched, but there must be some sort of kryptonite for the Homelander, or is he immortal? Yeah, there is something they've created that they've been trying to get to him with. There is something they can do that will kill him. Some kind of virus they've engineered that will kill Soups. Now, this is interesting. Now, the point is, we look at these shows, like, so in Utopia, someone alluded to earlier, the conspiracy theorists have the unreleased issues of the comic. And because of this, they know about the incoming pandemic. So this person's asking what's on the next two episodes, under the presumption that it's going to predict Trump. And she's being ironic. She's trying to make sort of a joke, but it's actually correct. If you want to know what's going to go down, it's probably going to be reflected in those two movies. And so that's a prediction. It's a prediction that a movie or series that contains predictive programming is going to contain more. It's not just in this one episode. All right, let me go through my feed. After MAGA evangelical leaders blessed the golden Trump statue, they were allowed to pray for it before refreshments were served. See, these are MAGA people drinking Kool-Aid. And the Kool-Aid man shows up. Obviously, it's a joke. Although, do you remember when there was a Kool-Aid man balloon at like the Macy's parade? And the eyes and the nose looked like 666. And it had one hand up, one hand down. It looked like some kind of Baphomet. And they talked about the weight of it. Like it had some, let me bring this up. Dimensions. What are the dimensions of the Kool-Aid man balloon in the parade? Perplexity's pretty good at getting my vague questions accurately answered. Commenter Slaytrida24 says the virus doesn't work on V1. Okay, here it is. The Kool-Aid man in the Macy's Thanksgiving parade is 33 feet tall. That's what it was. It was 33 feet tall, and then it had the Baphomet pose, and then it had the hand up, hand down. Someone said those Brandon Fraser's dumbbells could be 10 kegs. Yeah, it could be. That's what the tutu could be. But what people have said is that this is, according to DeepMind, the image contains synth ID, which means it was generated in whole or in part by Nano Banana. So Brandon Fraser lifting weights is fake. All right, let's continue. News Nation reports the 46 UFO videos requested by Rep. Luna will be released next week. Again, the ones they've released have all been debunked. Some of them have been old, decades old. One of them was a UFO as described by an eyewitness drawn on top of an actual FBI photo. So a composite. Breaking, Erica Kirk will be joining the commentary team for UFC White House. That's going to be on Trump's birthday, 6/14. People are knocking Dana White because he has Epstein paintings on his wall. And he has Epstein paintings on his wall. If you look at like the artwork of the people associated with Pizzagate, people like Podesta and others, the people who hung out with the spirit cooker, Abrina, what's her name? The spirit cooker had all this, performance art, I guess you would call it. And spirit cooking itself, the term, is I guess it's a performance art thing. A lot of her work seems really weird and almost nihilistic and masochistic. Marina Abramovic. Spirit cooking was a performance art project. Yeah, that's right. She's like writing on the wall in pig's blood and stuff. Well, Dana White's art has a Japanese Yakuza gang member mounted on somebody. And so, I guess they say it's erotic. That's kind of subjective. It looks bad in a lot of ways. And then next to it is a young girl whose face is covered in butterflies, which is a well-known symbol associated with Monarch, mind control, MK Ultra. In all the movies, all the predictive programming, like that's a really dark a road to go down. But if you do, and you look at the symbolism of the butterfly in movies and in music videos, it does have this consistent association with mind control. And there's a lot of conspiracy theory, Pizzagate level stuff, satanic panic stuff that makes these same associations. In fact, there's so many damn movies. There was that movie with Tom Arnold. I don't want to recommend it, but I remember there was this movie that was filmed here locally with Tom Arnold where he's a predator. And he talks about the butterfly when he's talking to his victim. And the movie's about these victims when they're grown up. And let's see what it was called. I'll see if I can find it here in a minute. But anyway, I'm not recommending it. But I found a lot of movies with this very dark theme of mind control, trauma-induced mind control in particular, and butterflies just being a consistent thing. So for that to be on the wall behind Dana White kind of stands out as conspicuous. Like they have a weird sense of aesthetics. You've seen the Labubus, right? It's like these rabbits with the skinned faces. People love that stuff. Okay, moving on. Did we do a thorough enough breakdown, by the way, of the whole bunny things? Like the Donnie Darko bunny, the Labubu bunny associated with the demon Pazuzu from The Exorcist. Slate Trader says, show Dark Matter on Apple TV, highly recommended for this community. It's like Geordie Rose with his D-Wave quantum computer. Dark Matter? Okay, Dark Matter. And what's it on? Apple TV. Let me see if this is the one I'm thinking of. Because there was a show called... Okay. Season 2 begins in August. Alternate Realities. Is this the one where they time travel in a tunnel and they come out in 33-year increments? Like 1987, 2020? Is that the one? There was another movie. Let's see. Movie. I think it was called... It might have been Dark Matter. But the whole theme was time traveling in 33-year increments. Okay, there we go. No, that's just Dark. Dark on Netflix. Time travel works in 33-year jumps. The central rule is you can move 33 back or forward through the cave or the wormhole. So you can go 53, 86, and 2019. And we were talking about this because 2019 and 86 are the years of the Burning Man. And we were talking about the significance of Burning Man, Black Rock City, the dead 33-year-old, the 2019 incident where the man who was 33 set himself on fire on the ellipse, and it happened 33 years prior. Same place, same age. The recent one, though, he was wearing a USA shirt, which was really cool. Although, as a rule, if you see somebody on the news who's on fire, like Maxwell Azarello when Trump was on trial, and they're not screaming, they're probably using Zell gel, the naked burn gel. It's for special effects. They use it on Game of Thrones. The CGI wasn't up to par, so they used this gel, and the special effects crew just basically sets the person on fire. They hold their breath, they do their thing, and they extinguish them. It's called a naked burn gel. Northern Girl says the book is really good. Okay, so it's a box to infinite realities. So the movie Dark, or the show Dark, I believe it also connects to another show called 1899, which has some intriguing symbolism. It's got this ship. Is it called Hades? Something like that. Here we go. It's the creators of Dark. It's not a direct sequel or prequel, but it has the same puzzle box style. So they're on. It's called Cerberus, which is the three-headed. It's Kerberos. I think it's a reference to that three-headed dog. And then there's a ship called Prometheus. But yeah, it's a shared tone. It's almost like a shared universe story. Although in that one, it has this major twist at the end, which I don't want to give a spoiler for. It's actually worth watching. Okay, now we'll probably get back into that. Time travel is a reoccurring theme in all of the predictive programming connected to Trump, with the exception of maybe Trackdown. But I mean, so you look at like Biff Tannen, for example, based on Trump, and in all the various fictional counterparts of Trump, you consistently find certain elements: assassination attempts, 9/11, and time travel. Well, Back to the Future, you've got the time travel. Homelander assassination attempt. Donnie Darko, 9/11, time travel, and assassination attempt. By the way, Donnie Darko, the bunny. So the significance of the bunny is it mirrors Alice in Wonderland, where she goes out into the field, she sleeps, she follows the rabbit, time's running out. Well, the rabbit that shows up to Donnie, Frank, tells him you've got 29 days left. Time's running out. And then in Leave the World Behind, produced by the Obamas, a movie that contains a ton of predictive programming for what followed, and it has a whole blackout theme. In Leave the World Behind, the character Rose, the little girl, is derisively referred to as Donnie Darko because she's so weird. But at the end of the movie, she's the one who goes into the bunker, goes into a rabbit hole. She's the one who survives. But there's some kind of connection here between Donnie Darko, the character Rose, and then, of course, the nuke scenario at the end of the world scenario. Because Donnie Darko, end of the world, end of his world, constant use of the word, a phrase, end of the world. Sort of like the Trackdown episode is called End of the World. But Rose is there to watch the end of the world. She says, I want to see how it all ends, referring to the final season of Friends. All right, so let's move on. Scrolling through my Twitter feed. Chud the Builder says, phone was seized as evidence of the crime. Just got back to Airbnb after 13 hours in custody. Okay, so Chud the Builder was arrested last night. If you don't know who he is, he's one of the persons on X who seems to be artificially hyped up. And he runs around just basically yelling racial slurs at people. And then he says, it's my free speech. And when they come after him, he brandishes the gun, which is also, if it's concealed carry, you're not allowed to flaunt it as like a threat. And he's engaging in what you would call incitement, pretending he doesn't know this. So he's a classic provocateur, but he's way too hyped up. And there's been a number of incidents lately that have been seemingly escalating. There's a bounty out on him. So he might get killed in a live stream, or he might more likely kill somebody. Because anytime somebody objects to being disparaged, he deepens the disparaging. It's actually a form of provocation. You could call it reactive abuse, where you poke the bear, you goad, you trigger, and then when they respond, you use that response against them. Oh, look how crazy you are. Look how little self-control, no impulse control. So he's baiting them like, it reminds me of this clown at the state fair here. And I remember the clown was, just saying things to people walking by, and then you have to pay $5 to throw the baseball and hit the target and dunk the clown. So he's like one of those. So he's trying to get somebody to dunk him, but instead of falling into, instead of just taking the hit, instead of giving them a little payback, he's baiting them so he can shoot them and then claim it was self-defense, which again, this is like not really how self-defense works. In fact, in one instance, someone knocked his hat off his head. They flipped his cowboy hat. And in fact, they ran with it for a minute. And what does he do? He runs after the person and then sprays the mace. That's not exactly self-defense. And so I'm saying he can't be that dumb. He's making a ton of money, has a lot of big donors. So this has got to be some kind of psyop. Oh, I'm talking about Chud the Builder. He's a kick streamer. So you've got two kick streamers that I know of. And I only know of them because they've been super hyped up. You have Clavicles, who's American Psycho on this downward spiral of meth, drugs, and narcissistic supply. And then he's drowning in his reflection. The bad part of Narcissus, where he's just like delusional at this point. And now he's mixed up with some mafia people. He owns a nightclub in Miami. Lots of fights, very trashy place. Again, it all looks staged to me. I think his overdose on camera was staged. And now you have this character, Chud the Builder, who seems to be an agent provocateur driving around trying to provoke fights. And he finally got what he wanted, I think. Okay, a lot of people are claiming that the flare parachute is not a flare parachute, but it is in fact an angel with 8 wings. People will believe anything. I know some people, I won't name names. Well, I'll name one of them, Dave J., who believes that the airplanes are angels, the ones that spray the chemtrails, that these are demons, and then the angels come and that there's a war in heaven. You have to ask him to give you the verses and give you the whole breakdown. I don't think it's true, but there are some people who believe, pretty much will believe anything. So if you want to believe that a video of a flare and a parachute, and you can see the exhaust from it, if you want to believe that's an angel with 8 wings, have at it. So this is Chud, the Builder, if you didn't know. It's like that Hawk Tuah girl. Like I don't have a lot of, I don't want to give storage space to these people in my brain. Like I don't want to remember or know of certain people, and they kind of force meme them is what they do. And so why is this guy on blast? I would never watch content like this. It would not come across my feed organically, in my opinion. And I think it's mostly being, I think, intentionally released to certain demographics. They're targeting me for whatever reason. I'm in a certain demo, but it's not organic. They want us to know who he is, and it's because they're leading us up to a psyop. Sort of like nobody knew who Charlie Kirk was until he was on South Park. It's like, oh, now we know who he is. We hate him. Oh, good, he's dead. That's the relationship most people had with him. If he wasn't on South Park, they would not have known. All these people who are Erica Kirk deranged didn't know who Charlie was. And now they're caught in this intriguing story about this deep state, or the Mossad hired her as a honeypot to take down the leader of the youth Republican Christian conservative movement, the guy who's going to be president someday. And now she is. Or she's going to be vice president under Vance. So yeah, I apologize if you didn't want to know who this individual is. But they want you to know, and I think it's part of some kind of a psyop. James Lindsay says, if becoming a believer means I have to fall for the dumb UFO videos and believe it's an angel, I will pass. He said, stop kicking the goads and become a believer. You're a better Christian apologist than most of them. Okay, so Dr. Smith is trying to convert James, and James is like, no. The Pentagon can't confirm or deny whether they have kamikaze dolphins. Just leave the penguins alone. All right, October 28th, and that's an important date, 1979, Steelers versus Cowboys at Three River Stadium. Late in the game, Steelers leading 14-3, the play stopped cold. The players, the refs, and 50,000 fans stared skyward as two silvery spinning objects hovered overhead, captured on national TV. Now, I had not heard about this. This is apparently a UFO sighting at a football game. And so we're coming up on the World Cup.
It keeps saying, take us to your leader. I don't know.
It just looks like a couple Mylar balloons. I mean, people are so... It's the next shining object. Shiny object syndrome. Like, what's after aliens? Hopefully Fallout. Let's just get into it. Let's just get the nuke done. Like, maybe I should go to Seattle. Maybe I should seriously consider that. I could... You know what? I could probably finance the entire thing just by making various stops and doing book readings for the handbook for the recently deprogrammed. I found a place here in town where I can schedule a book reading and signing, and I can advertise it in a couple of local publications and possibly create some video content out of it, which was one of the plans. The plan was originally for the previous book, Auto Hoaxology 101. But the handbook, which contains all those ideas, is where I'm going to be implementing this plan, which is to promote the book in the usual way you would promote a book, which is readings and discourse and dialogue, and then using these clips to help consolidate our best ideas. Like, my way of promoting an idea isn't being an agent provocateur creating a nuisance. And that's what Kick seems to be about. We can just do this the old-fashioned way because the ideas stand on their own merit. Cope says, Chud is a modern derogatory internet slang term used to insult men on the far right, implying they're rude, regressive, or unintelligent. Okay, so he's consciously adopted that. Or his parents named him that, and this is nominal determinism. Plain Dakota says it's from the 1984 movie Chud, where it stands for Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dwellers. But wouldn't those be on the left? Like the deep state, the adrenochrome vampires. Those were all lefties. So those would be leftist Chuds. Whatever happened to Save the Children, by the way? There are so many people who need to own up to the propaganda, the slop that they helped to spread while we were here trying to advocate for common sense, objectivism, skepticism. They're like, but my children in the tunnels. Got to save the children. By what? Tweeting? By retweeting Donald Trump? I don't see you saving any children. Like, oh, you don't want to save the children? It's like, you don't want to wear the AIDS ribbon? You don't want to wear the Save the Children ribbon? Not one child was saved. Fact. All those children grew up. They're voting age and they're voting Democrat. You lost them. Armin Reese says, Kick sounds like Jackass TV. Yeah, I don't know why Kick isn't playing. I want to take a look at that. I want to double check and make sure that I didn't put the wrong link. I have all my links updated at ips.monster. Okay, kick.com/infiniteplane-radio. Why isn't it live? That's interesting. Okay, well, I'll have to fix that today. Thanks for letting me know. We'll have everything fixed before we get into a solid schedule, which we're getting closer to that. I can continue to do this daily, and I can probably continue this even maybe to the end of the month before I get busy again with work. Unless I can accelerate the book sale thing. And that's been a plan for this whole year. And if I could coincide my agendas, the whole Seattle getting nuked with the book selling, I could probably make this work. I like the idea of going to the Space Needle. I can be JL's eye on the ground, because Jurassic Liars is the one who has really put forth the notion that that's the 9/11 date to come. So think about it. 9/11, major transformative psyop. 3/11, major transformative psyop. So 6/11 would make a lot of sense. We're looking at 369. Like there's some kind of code here at work. And we have consistently identified 6/11 and 11/6 with various predictive programming threads, like propaganda threads, connecting these numbers with the nuke and with domestic terror. So domestic terror, nuke, 6/11, it's all part of a group, a cluster. And I think it would be done by the base, which is a white nationalist paramilitary group that's been training for years. And the base happens to be the translation, the English translation of the word Al-Qaeda. So 6/11, 9/11, external, internal, the base. Terror cell, incels. There's actually a lot of overlap with the MAGA ban, Taliban. It's by design, of course. The QAnon verses, Quran verses, the idea of a threat against the great Satan or a threat against the deep state. How is the deep state different than the great Satan? They're not. And the criticisms that the anti-deep state MAGA ban have for Hollywood and for women are the same that you hear from the Taliban. So this is a government-created threat, the domestic terror threat coming from the far right. And then you have that guy Dan Blitzkrieg, major far-right figurehead. He's the guy with the mohawk and the mullet, and I don't know what he's famous for. I think he won all his money playing poker. He was actually at the Vegas PSYOP, trying to get the cops to give him a gun so he could go get the guy. Well, that guy recently came out, according to Nick Fuentes and others, it turns out that he's been trying to generate interest in assassinating a lot of prominent Jewish ministers and including people like Ben Shapiro. So Nick Fuentes sat in on a conversation with a right-wing influencer where the discussion was killing Ben Shapiro, and he didn't report this to the feds. That's very questionable. Let's see here. Sabasa and Ginger says, this way you only put your work effort once. That's how I look. Oh, digital products? Okay. Sell the PSYOP cards in digital format. That's actually a good idea. I will look into that. Because I'm going to release an ebook of the handbook. Because we have the paperback. I need the ebook produced so I can do an audiobook They create the audiobook out of the ebook. So I'm doing that today. But I was going to sell the book on Etsy as well as Ko-Fi as a digital download. But if I put my PSYOP cards as digital downloads, people could use them as screensavers or put them on things. I mean, really doesn't matter. If the whole purpose is disseminating these ideas and these memes. In fact, I have a painting here of Jim Carrey holding a Joe Biden mask based on one of the cards that will be done later today. I'll share a picture of it because I'm not doing private commissions in the sense where you tell me what you want and I imagine it and I draw it. I can't really rent out my imagination. It's not cooperating with me. But what I will do is I will paint any PSYOP card on request. So if you like any particular PSYOP trading card, I do have that as a product on Ko-Fi. Okay, let's continue here. Trump took $59 million. Oh, yes. Apparently, Trump sold a bunch of phones that do not exist. It's hilarious. How many times do they do crypto rug pulls? You know, my favorite rug pull or scam or grift that Trump has done so far is when, after the election was lost, he said this big deal is coming. Mark this date. And all the QAnoners with their hopium, they were saying, this is the date. JFK Jr. is coming, and they're going to expose that the election was stolen. All these people had their hopium up. They were counting down, and on that date, when Trump comes out and he's going to deliver the docs, he's going to arrest Obama, he's going to take back the country, he's going to save America, guess what he did? He brought out some NFTs where he's dressed as a superhero. He's in a cowboy uniform. He's Batman. So he unleashes a bunch of Trump NFTs, which were worthless. And it was, in fact, a Ponzi scheme because obviously he and his own made a bunch of money before they rug pulled it. But what's even worse, the images weren't even all that super original. They superimposed Trump's head on the bodies of images they got from a Walmart catalog selling costumes. So you go to the Walmart site, you screen cap all these costumes, you throw Trump's head on it, you upload it, you call it an NFT, make money. So the fact that these same people are buying Trump phones, these same people were probably against, I mean, this is just fantastic. I gotta get a better source on this. Because it might not be true, but I have been seeing people saying, where's my phone? I paid $500. Did Trump produce his own phone, or did he rip off his fans? Trump did not build... Okay, here we go. Okay. They said it was going to be made in the USA, but it's not. It appears to be that he ripped off his fans with branding and hype, and he has not produced an in-house Trump-made phone. So it's made in China or something. Yeah, made in China. The phone was marketed with patriotic language and high-profile promises. The product was white-labeled or outsourced. Okay, so I could do this. I could buy a bunch of phones, white-label from China. I email the manufacturer my logo, and they'll stick it on the phone. So now it's an IPS phone. And then I can come out and say, hey guys, I've been really busy because I've been striking deals and we're making our own smartphones. Got a smartphone company, the IPS smartphone company. It's like, no, I'm drop shipping from China. What a scam. Now, who's actually making this money? Like, is Trump masterminding these scams? Or is this the PSYOP entertainment complex capitalizing off of their character? Because he's a character. This is kayfabe. So these scams have to be, I mean, either he's grifting on top of being a major league actor, crisis actor, PSYOP actor, which is like possible, I suppose. I mean, why not? You're a crisis actor, you might as well make some money. Like, I'm surprised that Kyle Rittenhouse didn't set up a GoFundMe for his bug bite. Conservative influencer Faith Merrill says she would have babies with Nick Fuentes in a heartbeat. To which Laura Loomer says she's too old for him. Sadly, she's correct. The MAGA ban have all endorsed. In fact, Tucker Carlson has been exposed multiple times being an apologist for, what do you call that? Child brides. Rod Dreher says, and this is a conservative Orthodox Christian, he says, I'm struggling to understand how Protestant pastors could justify gathering to bless a golden Trump idol. I supported him in 2024, but this is Saddam Hussein crap. Maybe even Nebuchadnezzar. Christians should not be doing this, and his Easter garbage. That's not the craziest thing we've seen. Apparently there's 46 UFO videos coming. Come on. We're moving on to the next thing. Let's get on with the raids. Let's get on with the rat aids. Oh, and I don't know what the significance of this is, but the pool next to the big obelisk has been dyed blue. Actor Jim Caviezel. So if you don't know who Jim Caviezel is, we're lucky he's still with us, because he was the Jesus in Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. And he almost didn't survive, because during the 5th take on the Sermon on the Mount, he was struck by lightning and he died. But luckily he resurrected and he was able to finish his role as Jesus. He resurfaced with Sound of Freedom, a movie about Tim Ballard and how Tim Ballard was intercepting child traffickers. And this is before, in real life, Tim Ballard, the guy he's portraying, got charged with human trafficking because he was taking women with him on his anti-child trafficking endeavors, undercover, pretending to be husband and wife, and then he attempted to treat them like they were actually married, like he was inappropriate with these women, and taking them out into the middle of nowhere, trafficking them. So yeah, he's been accused of a lot of things, human trafficker. Anyway, Jim Caviezel survived being struck by lightning. He also played Count of Monte Cristo, which has some fascinating elements I'd like to talk about at some point. One of my favorite scenes in the book is when the Count is describing what he thought when he got all that money. And he describes it as Satan took him to the highest mountain and offered him all the kingdoms. And he said he wanted to become Providence. He wanted to punish the guilty and defend the innocent. And this is the masked superhero archetype, like Batman, the rich undercover vigilante with all these contraptions and gadgets. I think it comes from Alexander Dumas's character, and Batman kind of took all those elements. In fact, in the Count of Monte Cristo book, he's initiated into a group of pirates, and it's a blatantly Masonic initiation. And I think he was actually he was a prominent member of the Freemasons at the time. But that book, The Count, of course, I mean, it has this story of this guy who is basically framed for something, thrown into a dungeon. He escapes, and I think he's 16 years in. His name was Edmond Dantes. And I found some fascinating parallels between his journey through the imprisonment and escaping it, and Dante from Dante's Inferno going through the underworld. Like, there's some great subtexts here in these stories that I found to be parallel. All right, let's continue here. Jim Caviezel says adrenochrome is 10 times more potent than heroin. I mean, wouldn't that be unconsciousness? He says there's multiple islands run by intelligence agencies. Like, what's your evidence? This guy's a QAnoner, but like I'm asking legitimately, what's his evidence for this so-called adrenochrome? It's like people don't even know what, like, define adrenochrome and its effects, demons, interdimensionals. Like there's this entire lexicon of things, sacrifices, rituals, these things that need to be defined by the people that are using them. Because if we're not holding them to objective standards, to definitions for words, they get away with mystifying these topics.
For labor, for slave labor, or is it
adrenochrome? The whole adrenochrome empire. This is a big deal. It is listed under the NIH. It is a chemical compound. It's a molecular structure. Is C9H9NO3. It is it's an elite drug that they've used for many years. It's 10 times more potent than heroin, and it has some mystical qualities as far as making you look younger.
Making you look younger. Okay. Well, let's take a look at the people that they list as imbibing adrenochrome on a regular basis, and let's see how they've held up. Because I have yet to see any of these celebrities or politicians who have somehow evaded aging. Maybe Tom Cruise. I mean, if there's any adrenochrome user, but outside of him, I mean, who? Mystical qualities, fountain of youth, baby blood. But that's Steve Bannon, who scammed millions out of MAGA, claiming he was going to personally build the wall, and he didn't, and he got pardoned for it. There's all kinds of grift. I call it the PSYOP entertainment complex. But when we spell PSYOP, I used to say, make sure you spell it with a $sign, because there's just so much money attached to it. And I agree that there is an adrenochrome empire if you just replace adrenochrome with attention, with louche, with emotional reactivity. But it's just the mental thing. There's not like a literal substance or gland in the body that they're going after. But it's certainly there in the culture, in the subtext, that they're like Dark Crystal. How many movies can you point to? The Golden Compass. There's so many movies you can point to. Dr. Sleep, where you have the extraction of some kind of soul energy out of the victims. I mean, it's alarming how common a theme it is. So you can understand why people would think it's true, because they believe that predictive programming foreshadows real events. But it may just be that this is what makes these things believable. The propaganda reinforcement, like in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where he brings up adrenochrome. It's the first time people heard about it. That's what they say, it's more potent than heroin. And in that scene, he talks about how he got it from some satanic gang, satanic drug traffickers, or Hell's Angels. I don't know. I got to dig deep into that again. I used to sell a coffee mug that said, "Don't talk to me until I've had my adrenochrome," and I had the molecules of it that spell or has the rabbit head. That was one of the things too. They say that the structure of adrenochrome resembles like a small rabbit, and Follow the Rabbit, the Alice in Wonderland stuff, has an entire body of symbols that would relate to that idea. Look, butterflies, rabbits, these symbols are there. So when I say adrenochrome is a hoax, yeah, it's true. So is Q. But the reason why people believe this stuff is that it saturates the entertainment. It saturates it. So what's that for? Do you remember when Q was at its peak and there was this TV show or special where Lady Gaga comes out with a piano that looks like a brain, and she's got these Freddy Krueger knife hand gloves, and she's playing piano on it, and the song is called something like Chromatica. And I said, oh, Adrenochromatica. Because the whole theory was they were operating on brains. But anyway, Jim Caviezel, a highly credible source. Again, we're lucky he didn't die. We're also lucky that Tucker Carlson survived his attack by the demon. We could have lost Tucker. I'm curious about one thing. When it comes to Charlie Kirk's ghost, how come when Charlie Kirk's ghost went down to Candace Owens to say he was betrayed, how come he didn't just save her 6 months of speculation and conspiracy theorizing? Why didn't he just say, Erica shot me? Like, why didn't he just say who did it? No, he shows up as a ghost. He talks to her, in her dreams, rather. Plus, he foreshadowed it in many of their tweets. But why didn't he say something explicit? It's kind of annoying about ghosts. You know, they lead you on these wild goose hunts. Like, they could just save you all the work. They're so indirect. I guess it's more entertaining for them to watch us struggle, trying to figure it out. Like, they're outside of time and space. They see everything. And we're down here and clueless. And I was thinking about how Luigi Mangione raised $2.8 million on his birthday a few days ago. He just turned 28. And I was like, you know, it's kind of interesting how Tyler Robinson killed a much higher value target and he doesn't have the groupies. He doesn't have legions of furries. Like, there's nobody there for Tyler. And then every time I see Candace Owens, she's always talking about how Tyler's innocent. Well, anyway, he's going to be on Court TV very soon, and we're going to find out what's going on with that. But I'm just saying, why doesn't she send him some money? 28. She doesn't. I mean, she could. She and her husband could probably afford it. But anyway, I was going to say, Candace Owens is Tyler Robinson's Mangionette. The Mangionettes are the female fans of Luigi Mangione. You probably know one, sadly. You probably do. The same people who cheered the death of Charlie Kirk are probably in the Mangione fan club. By the way, Tim, in iPet Go, when the Christ figure goes in flames, he's leaning in the same position as CK when he fell off the chair. Oh yeah, Charlie Kirk was leaning left at the end. It's an ongoing joke. So there's these two jokes, right? They're both equally in bad taste. One of them is, whenever George Floyd's death day passes, Alex Stein and every other right-wing comedian will say, congratulations, George Floyd, you're 4 years sober. Like, they've been making this joke for years, which I don't find funny. Because even though it's fake, why would you rip on someone, dying of an overdose? It's a horrible thing to laugh at. Well, for the last few weeks, whenever Alex Stein goes to a college campus to debate with freshmen, they all do the same thing. They're like, yeah, I'm sorry about your friend Charlie. I know he was a right-winger his whole life, but towards the end he leaned left. Referencing how he fell off the chair to his left, gushing blood, and they all laugh. And then Alex Stein, another right-wing comedian, gets all pinch-faced, gets all mad and cantankerous, and he shames them for laughing at what's not funny. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but if you can mock their martyr, they can mock yours. It's fair game. Like, how thin-skinned can you be? And it's also worth pointing out that Alex Stein knows Charlie Kirk is not dead. He's in on the grift. So it makes it even more funny here, because he's having to pretend like he doesn't think it's a funny joke, because he has to pretend like Charlie's really dead. So I think he's staying in character. I think inside, Alex Stein laughs his ass off when somebody cracks that particular joke. And by the way, both Charlie and George have the October 17th birthday. It's Charlie Kirk Day or George Floyd Day, depending on where you are on the political spectrum. Interesting. Yeah, I'm loath to mention iPet Go because it's so far in the past and it contains so many random bits of symbolism that it's almost Texas sharpshooter fallacy where you can connect any psyop to it. But I'll look into it. I mean, it is spooky, it's ominous, it's got a lot of, I think, George Bush derangement kind of built into it. It's surreal. But I don't know if it has any value as a predictive programming. Like, there's this channel, this whole group of people, it's actually smaller now, I think, who do nothing but talk about how every single Stanley Kubrick film, especially like The Shining in particular, have some relevance to every event. And they're able to create these codes. And that's what's the fallacy I alluded to, that's what it's about. The Texas sharpshooter fallacy is that if you have a large enough body of content, if you fire enough rounds at the side of the barn, you're going to have clusters. And if you highlight those and ignore the rest, you can create the illusion of being on target. That's why I tend to focus exclusively on concurrent programming, because the concurrent stuff is irrefutably coordinated with mass media psyops. Speaking of which, North Korea updates their constitution to automatically launch nukes if Kim Jong-un is assassinated. Trump said the same thing. He said if they take him out, go after Iran. Do you remember when The Atlantic predicted, and this is a magazine owned by Alex Soros, the son of George Soros. So Laura Loomer, who noticed it, says this is proof that George Soros and the left are financing the assassination. But take a look. Colin Rugg said, Trump confirms a chunk of his ear is gone. More details to follow. But someone else says, there is no way this was staged. Maybe an inside job, but not staged. Inside job is a guardrail. But look how specific this is. The exact part of the ear where Trump was shot, according to the story, is marked on the cover of The Atlantic in what looks like blood. And of course, this is just one among many examples of predictive programming. So you can say we're just noticing coincidences with our pattern recognizing monkey brains. But to me at this point, that's reality denialism. And it's not even being intellectually honest. It's just basically saying you're too lazy to assess the evidence. Incredulity, hand-waving, straw man arguments aren't good enough. Create a steel man. Confront our claims directly. My book's out there. And refute it if you can. If you can refute it before, June 9th or whatever, then I won't have to go to Seattle. I won't be selling the book because you will have refuted the premise. You will have said, no, actually, everything's real in the news. It's organic. History is not made up in advance. You guys are just noticing too many things. Yeah, please, make that case. I'd be curious to hear it. A 50-foot statue of Prometheus will be shipped to the USA. It cost $1 million to build. Okay, that is neat. That's going to offend a lot of people because Prometheus is a titan. This is the story. And then just keep in mind that the truthers will call this evil. The Olympians, the gods of Olympus, were up there living high tech. Mankind is down in the dark. The Titan, Prometheus, didn't think this was fair, so he stole fire from the gods, which means what? The fire just means knowledge. He stole whatever makes them gods, the knowledge disparity. So he gave that intel to the masses. And what do? They light up civilization, so the gift of fire. So basically he enlightens man, despite the fact that the authorities did not want that to happen. So they attach him to a rock, they chain him down, and he has his liver devoured by an eagle every day, and then it regenerates as punishment for helping man. So this guy sort of sacrificed himself so you wouldn't have to live in the dark. So in that sense, you would say that's kind of noble. Going through all that pain, cumulatively, honestly, having your liver devoured by an eagle for 7 years on end is definitely harder core than just dying on a cross in the course of a couple of days. Cumulatively, we're talking 7 years of vivisection. Would you rather die on a cross over the course of a weekend? Or would you rather dangle from a rock for 7 years and have your liver devoured by predator birds every single day. So I'm just saying, if you're weighing it, Prometheus isn't that bad of a guy. Very Christ-like in that sense. But because of his association with bearing the light, bearing the flame, enlightenment, he's been conflated with Lucifer, which is a bad thing, because bearing light, bearing knowledge is bad, or something. So anyway, Prometheus statue, the world's going to end. Mistress Dividend says, so if they're just using aliens to distract us from the Epstein files, is this technically alien versus predator? Valid question. Breaking, the Pentagon says UFO files will be rolled out in waves every few weeks, like episodes in a Netflix series. Tucker Carlson just threatened to kill Ted Cruz. This is stochastic terror. You know, you can't give people plausible deniability. They're not dumb. You have to have some respect for the fact that these people aren't dumb. You can't fall into that trap. They know what they're doing. The optics are very obvious here. Tucker Carlson, you know, he's pretending to be, you know, grassroots, a populist. So you'll see him wearing flannels in public and carrying a hunting rifle. And so here he is, the hunting rifle, blasting away. Then it cuts to Ted Cruz. So what is the message there? Well, obviously he's going to pretend not to know. Like Erica Kirk didn't know how bad it looked to be wearing tight leather pants while hugging J.D. Vance. Like these are things that if you're in media, you would automatically know the associations. You know what people are going to say. So in this case, him blasting a weapon and then it goes to Ted Cruz. Yeah, that's obviously a threat against Ted Cruz. Tucker Carlson is putting it out there. Movie Time Pick says, at this point, the boys don't need a script. They just need a news feed. It's like, I'm glad you're finally noticing, but you haven't really noticed enough. Like you're noticing the pattern, you're scratching the surface, but now what you have to do is recognize that this didn't just happen this one time. This happens every day and has for many years. So either you're dealing with psychic writers, psychic directors, or you're looking at collusion between fake events produced by media at the behest of government and mainstream entertainment. So what's more likely? You know, what's the most likely explanation here? That these are coincidences that keep happening, or that there's some intentionality here. You know, Ian Fleming, author of 007 James Bond, said, once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. Well, what about when it's like 33,000 times? All right, it's systemic fakery. Systemic fakery, the existence of it, and the implications of long-term planning for fake events destroys all the conspiracy theories. All of your conspiracy theories, all your favorite conspiracy theories that you follow, are subplots to the main script. They do not exist outside of the script. They're not separate from the fake stuff that they merge, that they converge with the real in the nightly news, in the daily news cycles. So if you're a conspiracy theorist, you have to recognize that you're going with the program. That the program consists of the mainstream and alternative because it's a singular stream, but it's bifurcated because they triangulate the two halves, but they both exist in the same pool of information. So if you're drawing from that pool, you're not outside the establishment's control. Everything you're doing is controlled opposition. Everything you're following. No exceptions. And we're going to make this clearer as we go. I have a book that promotes this whole model of interpreting media. And every time we watch the news, we see these examples where not only is there a pattern that's intentional, but it's being noticed widely. So you can't just say, oh, you guys are apopheniacs. No, I guess the director of The Boys is an apopheniac. I guess we're all just crazy. And these people say you're crazy for noticing patterns. It's like, actually, no. you're crazy for allowing the media to gaslight you to the point where you don't recognize patterns because it requires perception. You've outsourced your perception on these matters. To me, that's much crazier. You're in a cult. Armin Ross says, watch it again. I suggest. I think you'll find it purposefully predictive. Yeah, I'll look into it. I mean, people connected some sequences in there to Gabby Petito, for example. They connected the Christ to Nipsey Hussle. And it's not hard. So I have to look at the pet goat thing. But as a rule, I ignore pet goat and Simpsons. But I'll take a second look at it. It's been a while. Again, hantavirus is an anagram. It's a very ugly anagram. Maybe I'll share it in chat. I just don't want to put this picture in your head unless you have eye wash handy, which I don't. Raids, rat AIDS. Hantavirus seems to be replacing the aliens. We're waiting on the next 2 episodes of The Boys to know what's going to happen next. It involves a virus to kill soups. All right, well, we'll continue this conversation very soon. I'm going to start updating the archives now. Again, you can listen free at Spotify or any of the other podcast platforms. If you want the live notifications, you go to Substack or Patreon where you can get the archives. It's a small paywall to replace what YouTube took away. We'll be on a regular schedule here very soon. And yeah, I am seriously contemplating flying over to Seattle. I think I'll just fly and observing the spectacle on 6/11 or the lack thereof. Either way, it's worth going because we can revisit all of the predictive buildup for the eventual destruction of the Space Needle. However they're going to pull that off. And we have quite a lot of information attached to that. The Century Project, the buildup, the predictive programming, the meta-script context for it, the symbolism of the structure itself, even the date it was designated a historic monument ties into this agenda. It's a 419. So we'll have to dig into that. I'd like to go anyway and see it just because its dimensions. The 42 meter wide, 42 second elevator ride. The 42 stuff is big with it. UFO 42. And then it's next to this place that used to be called the Experience Music Project, which they changed, but EMP. So it's always been associated with the EMP. And then, yes, the Seattle Kraken. And the first time I saw the Seattle Kraken, it was a trailer for the new team, the 32nd NHL team, the Seattle Kraken. And the commercial for it was Seattle and the Space Needle and an electrical storm, and it looked like the Kraken coming out of the water, or the water was surging. The trailer was 1 minute, 13 seconds. And I thought, wow, every single time we see something leading to the buildup of the destruction of Seattle, there's a 311 or an 11.3 associated with it. So I took note of it. And of course, as you all recall, Seattle was ground zero on 311. And the needle was a big part of that whole story. But yeah, I would like to go see it myself just because it's such a significant monument. And these monuments, the architecture, these structures are built into the script, like the Twin Towers, like the Pentagon, the One World Trade Tower. In 2022, they did a simulation in Seattle for what would happen if there was an earthquake off the coast. And they said that there would be 42-foot waves that would take out the downtown. The simulation that they did could also refer to perhaps the Poseidon thing. The Seattle Fault Tsunami Simulation. A major quake would produce waves 42 feet high in parts of Seattle. The first one reaching the area in about 3 minutes. So the reason I bring up 42 is in the vast body of symbolism. 42 is massively coded into this stuff. Like the two blackouts in Manhattan, 42 years apart on 7/13, which was Trump's head wound day, which is 113 days from 11/3, by the way. That's also the date they released that How It All Ends, which has Seattle destruction. There is so much to get into here. We don't have a lot of time now, but the destruction of Seattle was also foreshadowed quite recently in the Final Destination Bloodline. So I don't know. What do you all think? We have a month. There's a 1 month countdown. So I might start following Jurassic Liars to see what we've missed, because he has been tracking this propaganda buildup. Now, where we diverge is he thinks Seattle's really going to get it. He's telling people to leave. He thinks it's going to be real. It's going to be biblical. The world's going to change. And I think it's just going to be a psyop, perhaps on par with 9/11, and maybe it'll contain elements from subsequent psyops, like the lockdown stuff for Fallout. So I'm looking forward to whatever they do. Rat AIDS, nukes, alien invasion, and perhaps whatever happens to Homelander is probably going to happen to Trump. So we're going to find out very soon. Anyway, thanks for the comments. Thanks for the channel support. We will continue this conversation in Discord as we are monitoring the unfolding pre-scripted reality. Again, no need to overreact to anything or react at all as though these things are unexpected, novel, or surprises. Because these things that we're talking about, as evidenced by the predictive and concurrent programming, are all pre-scheduled, programmed in advance, these productions. And whatever they're going to do,